Pascal. You are now rocking with that dude Pascal. We be going wild, Haitian in the building, so original. Got the haters catching feelings. Get your hands up to the ceiling and keep them held high. Cause St. Louis isn't ready. Forget about it, goodbye. Hold up, we just saying hi. Five somebody, rise up. Weekdays, catch us live. Somebody, let's go.
Good evening, good afternoon, and good morning to every single last one of y'all, and welcome to the Pascal Show. I appreciate all y'all for being on here. Real talk. I know this is not a super hot topic, but it kind of is, though, at the same time. Things are really starting to change for this mysterious case about JonBenet Ramsey, and I wanted to talk about this because maybe this could change a lot of cold cases, a lot of these true crime mysteries that we have that have been unsolved all this entire time. This could be a change and could possibly answer a lot of questions that we have lingering for a lot of us and for a lot of these cases. But anyway, again, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all y'all who are watching from all over the world, all over the country, and being a part of the conversation. We don't have a whole lot of time today, okay? But I wanted to talk to you guys about this because this is something that's just recently happened. This now, if she was still alive, this young woman would have been 32 years old a couple days ago, if I'm correct. Yeah, about 3 days ago. August 6th was her birthday. And yet we still do not have justice for this young woman, for this young girl, all right? She was 6 years old when her life was taken from a family. And, of course, we got to jump into this and talk about this because I got so many questions. And I got a very special guest coming up here very, very shortly. So we're going to get into it. So before we jump all the way into this, you know the procedure. Hit that like button down below. Send those likes past 100 likes. I see a bunch of you guys starting to file in. If you know about this story, if you don't know about this story, we're going to get you up to date and let you know what's really going on here so that you know what's going on with this particular story. And this, hopefully we'll have an answer very, very soon. Fingers crossed on that. So hit that like button, send it past 100 likes. Do not forget to hit that subscribe button. Be great to have you a part of the Pascal Show family. All right. Hit that Patreon, check out my locals page, and you can even just simply support the channel just by hitting that join button down below and support a channel that will. Support a channel that will. Anyway, let's get into this. All right. Appreciate all y'all for being here. Good evening. For those of y'all who are watching everywhere else, good afternoon and good morning to all y'all. There is an interesting situation going on revolving around this young woman's death, this young girl's death by the name of JonBenet Ramsey. In 1996, this young girl was found dead in the basement of her family's home. Now, there's been a lot of speculations, a lot of theories bouncing around like crazy. A lot of people blame the parents. A lot of people blame the son. In fact, there's a very interesting interview that the son had a few years back on one of her anniversaries of her death. That obviously sparked a lot of questions as well. It's like I said, this is an ongoing story that just keeps on going. And the reason why I feel like a lot of these questions have not been answered as far as who did this, was it a neighbor? Was it a family member? Who is it? Who could have done this thing? I think the reason why a lot of this has not been answered is because, well, I think there's things like DNA that could have been tested. There's now new technology in DNA testing that they have not even bothered to use yet, which we are going to be talking about here very, very shortly. It's just, like I said, so many questions circulate around this mysterious murder of this young girl. And so I'm very, very honored to bring in my good friend. We all know and love him, private investigator Jensen, to the show. How you doing, my brother? Thank you so much for being here, man.
Thanks. I'm doing great, Pascal. Thanks for the love. And thanks
Always.
for having me on your show, because I really have been enjoying this topic. I mean, as morbid as that sounds, but we really hope that over the next few months that we can get this case closer to being resolved.
Yeah, you know what I find really, really interesting about this is that it looks like there's possibilities of this actually getting closer to being closed, that we could get closer to some proof, some actual, at least go down another road, or maybe the same road everybody's been going on as far as speculations and what the evidence has been leading people down. But something's stopping this from happening. And that's the part I just don't fully get. And so I know that you've been looking into this case quite a bit as of recently. So it is an honor to have you on here to talk about this, so we can get through some of the motions and get through some of these theories into trying to understand why certain things have not been greenlit as of yet. So there's something I wanted to show everybody really quick, because it is something I found really interesting. I saw this a couple days. This is why I reached out to you, Jason, because I was like, this doesn't make any sense. This doesn't make any sense, but here it is. Okay. Now, JonBenet Ramsey's fingernail samples, long johns, and underwear should, that's the operative word here, should undergo modern-day DNA testing to solve notorious 1996 unaliving of the pageant queen. That she was 6 at that time, investigators say. But the thing is that it seems as if 5-0, the police, are dragging their feet. And I keep wondering, why is this happening? Why is there a dragging of thy feet around this case? If they can run the DNA test, why can't we just get to the answers quicker rather than slower?
Right. The biggest problem that Boulder Police has right now is the rapport that they have with the public on this case. They have no credibility with the family. They mired their reputation and blame the parents for decades. So in any investigation, there really has to be some kind of relationship between the investigating law enforcement and the victims. If there's no trust between them, you're not going to get it back by denying things or not cooperating or trying to repair the relationship. So on one hand, we got the Ramsey family asking that the case be removed from Boulder to a different agency in the state of Colorado. And meanwhile, Boulder's saying we're doing everything we can, and you're not going to get any more information out of us. So, there's a real perception problem there, where it looks like they don't want to, solve this case. And it's because for the history that Boulder has had, they run the risk of, at what point do we swallow our pride, admit that we were wrong? And it's rare to find anybody in a professional setting that's willing to swallow up that kind of pride. Meanwhile, they want to be the one to be the hero, and they don't want to relinquish custody of the case to somebody else. So, there's a real dilemma there for Boulder Police. The only way that they can fix it is actually solve it tomorrow. That being said, the Ramseys have really suggested the course of action, do the DNA testing recently, and really brought to light really strongly was the Golden State Killer case, where D'Angelo was identified from his DNA. It was put through genealogical sites and identified a relative, and then slowly they did the family tree and identified D'Angelo as the killer, and the rest is history. So since then, these groups like Parabon, Nanolabs, and genealogical experts like C.C. Moore and Colleen Fitzpatrick, they're out there, solving hundreds of these cases using the DNA and these genealogical sites. So really, what the Ramseys are saying, do it our way. And you wonder if the Boulder Police are trying to follow this prescript, but they're doing it behind everyone's back, so they don't have to appear to be yielding to the Ramseys, relinquishing custody and trying to solve it through DNA on their own. But we don't know because they're not talking.
Doesn't that seem a little odd to you? Doesn't that seem a little odd? That if they have this information, like we said before in this title, it said, fingernail samples, long johns, underwear. They can actually, now that there's new advancements in DNA testing, right?
Right.
That they can get a little bit closer to finding the truth. So why all this drama? I guess why the holdup, if that makes any sense?
Sure,
does that, and what I was trying to say is, like, does that make sense to you? If they have new technology and they can actually solve this cold case, because obviously it's a cold case, it's an unsolved mystery, right?
Sure.
What I don't understand the pushback.
Well, one of the problems that they got, technology has advanced. The question is, what is the state of the evidence? Back in the early days, this crime occurred in 96. So we're talking if there was DNA testing done in the, late 90s, early 2000, the former DNA technology required a sample the size of my thumb, which is huge. And if at that time the DNA actually consumed, the process consumed the DNA where it's no longer available for testing, at some point you can no longer retest an item because it's already been tested to its extreme. Like maybe they cut out swaths of the fabric. You can't test that if it's already been destroyed from some previous testing. So it makes sense and common with these investigations. Fingernail clippings have been helpful. The articles of clothing that may have had some semen, placed on it or something might be helpful. And that's why those things are being identified. But the problem that you got here is if the victim, this in the case here being JonBenet, didn't have a chance to scratch at her attacker, like if it was a manual strangulation, like somebody using your hands in front of you, where you're going to try and pry their fingers off or scratch them back, or you're trying to scratch their face or something, then you're not going to have a DNA from a perpetrator under her nails. So I would add to this list the rope. We got the alleged garrote that was used. Obviously, that particular item was handled by the perpetrator. So I would want to test the handle. I would want to test along the rope where he may have handled it, any knots that he fashioned. Certainly you want to test around, within a hand's reach of the knots, because you're going to have to, tighten the rope to do that. So I would really place more emphasis on this 1/4 inch nylon rope than anything else.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, of course, that and of course a slew of other things, I'm sure, have been maybe put on the side, I guess, or it's outside of the long johns, the underwear, the fingernails, that maybe that there's a little bit more, like the rope and all that they can actually test to get a little bit closer to finding out what the hell is the truth, and who, or getting closer to who could have it been, because some monster is out there free, maybe still alive. I mean, this marks 25 years. So 25th, they already passed 25 years. It's the 25th anniversary of her unsolved murder. So God knows if this creature is still on this planet, still alive. And yet,
right.
If this is the information that we have, and we can actually dive into this a little bit more, I just don't understand why. Like I said, I'm still trying to wrap my mind around the idea of why it's not already been happening, right? Why they haven't tested this stuff already now, and why there's been a drag from maybe Boulder the Boulder Police Department, right? But that's something I find very, very strange. But one thing I wanted to point out here really quick, and this is just a little bit of some information, okay? So Cindy Smith Mara is the daughter of the detective who first proposed the intruder theory, which proposed that the Ramsey family had nothing to do with their 6-year-old daughter's unaliving. And so Smith Mara, the daughter, all right, and a team of 12 volunteer investigators have come to support her father's theory and called on the police to retest JonBenet's underwear, long johns, fingernail scrapings, so that they can test, all right, so that they can lead straight to the killer. This is what Smith Mara says. Her theory is the Ramseys didn't do it, and the case can be solved using this DNA evidence the killer left at the crime scene. Now, okay, let me just emphasize on that just a little bit. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to have you disappear, Jason. Now, here's the thing. When it comes to this, all right, they're saying that this DNA, this evidence that they weren't able to actually test back then, they could test now. That's it. They could test that now. And again, well, I know I keep on kicking a dead horse, but I'm going to say it one more time. For some odd reason, they're not testing the DNA. That does not make sense to me. Now, I wanted to show you guys this too. And this is just from another article. Beauty Queen Bombshell, JonBenet Ramsey's brother warns cops it's time to talk after DNA breakthrough could blow lid off her killer. Literally, other people, the father stepping forward saying, what's up? We need to get this information. We need to get this DNA tested so we can find out who the hell did this to our loved one, to JonBenet. And yet, again, still to this day, they have not tested the DNA. I also want to point one more thing out. I saw an interview with JonBenet Ramsey's father 3 weeks ago talking about DNA testing. It has been 3 weeks plus, more than 3 weeks of them talking about this situation, and yet still there has not been a motion towards actually getting this DNA evidence tested. I don't get why this is happening. It doesn't make any sense to me. And maybe, I mean, of course, you know, this puts out a lot of speculations, conspiracy theories, Jason. And in my mind, you know, of course, I'm just like everybody else, coming up with our own conspiracy theories, conspirizing, okay, as I like to say. This makes me think that maybe the police are hiding something. Maybe they know it was an inside job within the PD, within the police department. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Because I think that there's a lot of people that are thinking that too. This dragging of feet translates so much to the public. What are your thoughts on that?
Right. Well, let's just back up for a second to get to your point here.
Sure.
This is a cold case, and oftentimes the reason why a case goes cold is there's a misapprehension of some evidence or a misunderstood fact. Okay. Here, I've identified 4 possible myths that should be, examined and debunked if possible. What these 4 myths are number 1, the note. I mean, we know that law enforcement right away assumed that the ransom note was assumption of guilt by, and they blamed the note written by Patsy. Okay, so that being said, they just also stopped looking anywhere else. And from my interview of the family members, as soon as they identified that this was a family job, that they didn't even bother to do a neighborhood check. So that's the first error that they had right there, is automatically just closing their mind to any other possibility. And the way to overcome that was to then look at the crime scene where they found JonBenet's body and see if the scene tells you something different. Okay, because remember, at this point, they're blaming the family and saying that Patsy wrote the note to cover up for somebody in the home. But if you look at the crime scene, they then say, oh, well, it was staged. Well, that's another myth. And what I see from the crime scene is that, number one, the type of ligature marks on her neck showed that there was a point that she was suspended vertically, because the type of ligature bruising on her neck, there's two of them where they angle up behind the ears or behind the skull in an upside down V pattern, which shows that somebody, it's common for like a hanging, if there was a suicide by hanging. And the reason is because the rope then converges to the point, and then it causes bruising up behind that way. So we got two angled bruises here of two attempts to raise her. And we also know that the victim, JonBenet, had this garrote. Is another myth that this was somehow used to strangle her intentionally. And what we got here is a garrote would have a handle on both ends.
Okay. So
there wasn't a handle on both ends.
Well, that's the one thing I want to know too, because when you say a garrote, right? For us regular Joe Blows out here, do you mind giving us the layman terms for a garrote, so that maybe some people who don't know what that is?
Sure. If anyone's familiar with like the old mafia movies or something like that, where someone comes up behind you and they take a garrote where there's a handle on both ends, and they go over the guy's neck, and then they strangle him from behind, right? So when they do that, there's usually a handle on both ends, so they can apply pressure in order to subdue you and, to take your life. Here, it's not the situation. We don't have a garrote. We have one handle on one end, and midpoint, it's tied around JonBenet's neck with an accidental slip knot. What happens with the slip knot? When you tighten it, it constricts. And then on the other end, the loose end that has no handle, it was literally tied around JonBenet's wrist. Now, why would they do that? What, JonBenet's participating in applying her own force against her? No. This guy, in an unsophisticated way, was intending to use this rope to pull her out of the basement through the basement window. And they were thinking that if I tie around the neck and tie around the wrist, I'll have a better chance of pulling her out. And what he did instead was he strangled her, killed her. And so at that point, we're wondering if he then realizes what he's doing or what he did, and then bails on the idea of an abduction, and then abandons her in the room, covers her up with a blanket, because he's hoping, oh gosh, she's going to die. It's in the middle of winter in Colorado. The window's open. Let's cover up and hope she don't die, so I'm like, a murderer. So that's my take on this. It wasn't a staged scene. It wasn't a garrote, and it's debatable. And if some experts say Patsy's handwriting matches the note, and other experts say it don't, it's debatable. It doesn't make it concrete. You can't just automatically assume that there's only one scenario here. And even that being said, the crime scene tells a different story. If somebody in the home was responsible, then who's trying to take her out the window?
Gotcha. And that's interesting, because I was just trying to show this here really quick. This is a photo that's on your Facebook page. And of course, this is kind of where I guess she was propped up against the wall. And this is your theory that maybe she was getting pulled up through that window up at top right here. That's the theory, that maybe somebody was trying to abduct her, and maybe did not succeed. Obviously, she was left behind. So that's something I wanted to point out really, really quick, which of course, It's very interesting. I mean, of course, they've said certain things like the father moved the body. They're saying that which is a possibility as well, but they could just have been a moving of body because of shock. It could have been somebody grabbing the body, trying to embrace her out of sadness, out of emotion, out of raw, intense emotion, of loss. That does happen. It really does. So there's a lot of theories like that. And of course, there's the theory about the mother maybe writing this letter, trying to cover up whatever the heck happened here and all that. And of course, there are a lot of theories. And I didn't want to interrupt you there, but I just wanted to show this photo that you posted on Facebook.
Right.
I know that you've been looking
and Pascal, if
bit.
anyone goes to that photo and zooms into it, they'll see that there's a smear, a diagonal smear from where the placement of her head is towards the window, and that would be consistent with her head injury. Remember, she was struck in the head with a flashlight, which subdued her in the first place.
Right here.
Exactly, right there. You can see that there's a trail marking from that location where the silhouette of the body could be, and towards the window. That would be consistent, and this explains why the suitcase would be in the placement that it is, rather than a lot of experts try to say it should be flush against the wall, but not if there's a body in the way.
It's so sad. It's so sad to think that this is obviously that we're still talking about this story, of course, that this is still a mystery that hasn't even been solved yet. There are plenty of theories out here, of course. But when you actually see more of the footage, when you see the rope, when you see how things were happening, it just makes you wonder what the heck actually happened to this young woman. And again, I hate to stress or circle back to that topic at hand here, which is there's a new way of testing this DNA that has been sitting dormant sitting on the side for 25 plus years. They could test this. They can test this DNA and get new information that could lead us or lead them to bringing this particular monster to justice, and they haven't done so. I still find that very, very strange, and you never know. It could honestly point back towards the family. It could do that. It could point towards a neighbor down the street. I'm going to be asking you your theories as well, Jason. I know that you've been showing us so far, but I want to get to this super chat really, really quick. And thank you guys so much for the super chat. Jacqueline, thank you for the $5. I appreciate it. Pascal, I think the dad did it because his wife was just showing off his daughter. I don't think the dad wanted his daughter in that type of business. Of course, she was doing pageants and all that stuff. She was a beautiful little girl. And maybe there is that theory that there was some sort of back and forth, or at least tension between parents, because one didn't want her to live this particular lifestyle or to be in those kinds of in those kinds of competitions. And another one was really wanted to put her out there and praised her because of the way that JonBenet looked, right? But
let me address that, Pascal. Let me address that. I have a master's degree in criminal justice, and part of the master's degree program is you study abnormal psychology and forensic psychology. So I can address this particular question. If there was any probability that the dad killed his daughter for this reason, okay, that's an irrational response. If there was any evidence that the father had a history of being irrational, there would have been a predicate of domestic violence. There would have been some history of arguing and fighting over this, and there isn't. It was completely endorsed by the father. So, that particular theory that the father did this because he didn't want her in a pageant, so he'd rather have her dead in heaven, that doesn't make any sense, and it won't pass the smell test.
So in other words, debunked. That theory debunked, right?
Well, and the DNA to this point, up till 2008, has already ruled out the family as being responsible, and that brings us up to the fourth myth in this case, that the first three were the note, the garrote, and that the scene was staged. The fourth one is DNA, and the reason why DNA is a myth here is because oftentimes they say if there's DNA on a DNA on the victim, the DNA reveals who the killer is. Well, not if it's a family member, unless it's a specific type, because if it was a family member, right, this is where the family lives. And there's interaction between family members. So I touch you because you're my daughter, or my wife touches me because we're married. You're going to have familial DNA among family members. So if the parents did it, or if a sibling did it, there would only be the DNA of those people on the victim. We have male DNA that does not belong to the family, not any family members. So there is a third party, an unknown party. So that means that somebody out there is responsible for the murder, and that was revealed in 2008. So we don't have a family-caused murder here. So the note has been debunked as being written by Patsy, unless there's an innocent reason for it, and that would be, for instance, I don't want the local Yoko Boulder PD on my case. I'd rather have the FBI. So who's got jurisdiction of a kidnapping? The FBI. Oh, we don't see a ransom note? I'll make one. I want the FBI on my daughter's case. And this is called state of mind evidence, okay? And this is further characterized and reinforced by the fact that she, being Patsy, immediately after calling 911, called her friend Priscilla White and told her, my God, JonBenet's missing. She's been kidnapped. Call the FBI. Okay, that's her state of mind. She wants the FBI there. So if there's an innocent reason for her writing the note, is to compel the jurisdiction of the FBI. And that's my honest assessment.
Interesting. So wait, so explain this a little bit for me really quick. I'm sorry. The writing of the letter, your theory is the reason why the letter was written, possibly written by the mother.
Possibly. Right. Like if it wasn't debated, because it is debated. Some say she wrote it, others say she didn't write it. So if it was beyond contest, let's say that all of the experts uniformly said Patsy wrote the note, then you got to go. You can't be a mind reader. You got to then assess: did she write it because somebody's guilty? Did she write it because she perceives someone's guilty and she's protecting somebody? Or did she write it because of some innocent reason, like, for instance, invoking the jurisdiction of the FBI? All those are possible. None of us can tell. Patsy's not around to ask.
Right.
And none of us could read her mind when she was here.
Interesting. That's very, very interesting.
So what you do is you get past the note and look at the evidence at the crime scene. And we see evidence of a third party, and we see an evacuation point is the basement. He tried to pull her out with a pull rope. This isn't a garage. It's a pull rope. I'm going to pull her out the window. And he wasn't strong enough. Okay, so what does that mean? It's not a mature adult. If it was a teenager that could drive, he's certainly not going to be, breaking into some little girl's home to abduct her. My criminal profile is this killer was between the ages of 12 and 16, and likely somebody was familiar with the back of their home, so it's like a neighbor. And so we're talking a neighbor, a teenager between 12 and 16. If we're going to find DNA, I would do testing of all the teenagers within the community there, within the few blocks, and test them all and compare with the existing DNA that we have from the crime scene.
Interesting. Yeah. Yes. I know you have that theory of maybe, or one of them, obviously, because there's obviously a lot of theories flying all over the place. Of course.
Well, but I only have one. I only have one.
So your only theory is a neighborhood teenager, tried to abduct her.
That is my professional assessment based on analyzing the evidence. Yes.
Okay. And then, of course, this letter, right? You're thinking that this letter was written, but like after, like, okay. So when it comes to this letter, in fact, I just tried to Google it, or like get the letter really quick. So I'm gonna try to get this out here so that we can take a look at this. But as far as the letter goes, right? Your theory is, so then tell me your theory. Okay, outside of Patsy, right? Outside of the mom. When was this written? How was it how was the letter there? How was the letter there, if that makes any sense?
Sure. Well, it was written from stationery from within the house using the Ramsey's own pen at their desk. So that was one of the reasons why it led law enforcement to believe that Patsy wrote it, because it wasn't a note that was brought into the home. It was a note that was crafted from inside the home. So the question is, did the abductor feel comfortable enough to write this note using their own stationery, like as if they were, going to deflect any kind of responsibility upon themselves? Or did Patsy want to bring the FBI in? I tend to believe that she tried to get the FBI involved. That's my belief.
I just find it so interesting. Of course, within that theory, right? And every theory is possible, right? Anything's possible. But I find it very.
But possibilities haven't gotten this case solved yet. So at some point, you eliminate the ones that didn't lead to an arrest, and you then regroup, refocus on something that someone hasn't looked at already. And we do know that there was no neighborhood check, and that means no one looked to see if it was a teenager or a neighbor or anything like that. We do know that they've eliminated sex offenders and things like that, but that was after the fact.
I see. I guess for me, I don't know. Just seems strange for a letter to be written. Like, obviously it was stationary from inside the house, taken from inside the house. What the reason behind Patsy, if it was her to write this letter, why she would do it. For me, at least, the motive behind writing said letter does not equate. Like, the math ain't mathin' for me personally, but it of course, that's why there's a lot of speculation, a lot of theories revolving around this situation. Of course,
and it's number one, the reason why this case is not solved, because people can't get past the note. They didn't get past the note in 1996. Then there's a large part of the population that doesn't get past it now. They sit back and say, "Oh my gosh, the note was written by Patsy. Period. The end. Someone there is guilty." Well, no. 2008, DNA excluded family members. We have a foreign DNA from somebody unknown that the Ramseys are hoping that by using CC Moore and Parabon Nanolabs, that's going to identify a family member that they can then narrow it down and pinpoint who the real killer was. But they got to forget about the note. Look at the evidence. That's what the Ramseys are asking for. They're saying, let's look at the DNA. Let's look at the DNA. So that doesn't involve the note. That doesn't involve any other theories. It just says, let's look at the DNA based on current DNA testing techniques, and let's go from there.
Right. And again, your theory could be right too. But like I said, there's so many different things, and I feel like there's a lot of people that have
Pascal. One of the things that DNA testing using genetic genealogy has produced over the years is it's identified neighbors. In numerous cases, one that comes to the top of my mind is Angie Dodge up in Idaho Falls. Genetic genealogy and using CC Moore identified Angie's killer as a teenage neighbor. So this isn't novel. And I've cited on my Facebook page 5 different cases where it was a neighbor, and genetic genealogy proves that. So one of the shortcuts that can happen is if we identify all the teenagers, especially if it's a teenager that grew up, 25 years later, that's a plenty track record of 25 years of other crimes, some similar, some just violent, some just maybe even alcoholism or something, because you can't get over the fact that he killed a little 6-year-old girl either, because this is constantly they're flashing in the news, reminding him how terrible of a human being he is. And if he's had children himself, he looks at his 6-year-old and goes, I can't believe it, and he's got to keep this a secret from his wife. So this guy's going to be tortured throughout his whole life because he's a lousy human being, and we all know, and he knows we know it. So
right,
somebody's out there is going to match this profile, and whether it's through CC Moore or somebody else or Parabon Nanolabs or someplace else, it's going to prove it's a neighbor, and I'll be right.
It's interesting, but if we look at this is just one of the pages of the note. Obviously, just to kind of jog everybody's memory, because of course this has been a story that is obviously it's a cold case. It's 25 years old as of this year. She would have been 32 years old. 3 days ago was her birthday, so she would have been 32 years old on the 6th of August. So clearly, this is a little bit of an older story, but obviously this is something that's still circling back. The father has stepped forward, basically saying, hey, we need to get this DNA information out here or to be tested. Obviously, there's new advancements in testing this DNA. This is just one of the pieces of evidence that were left behind at the scene of this crime. And of course, there's just like Jason's theory, there's a lot of people who have varying theories out here. But so I just wanted to show you guys the note, obviously, so that you guys could see it with your own 2 eyes. Now, your theory, as far as the DNA, do you think that it's going to get us closer? Will this actually get us closer to finding out what the heck is going on, as far as getting us closer to who it could have been? Because let's be honest. What if this person only did this one crime? Let's just say that. Let's just play that theory out. What if this 13 to 18-year-old neighbor did their thing, did the unthinkable to JonBenet, but never committed another crime? Would this get us closer to finding out?
I'm glad you say that, because Angie Dodge's killer never committed another serious crime after this. So it does happen that something so shocking, so alarming to you that you fly a straight and narrow path after that. So it can happen, and because it has happened already. That being said, here's another problem with DNA. Okay, so like you're pointing out, if you've never committed another crime, you're not going to show up on CODIS. And that's where Boulder, Colorado PD keep saying that they check CODIS daily. Well, the definition of crazy is to do the same thing every day and expect a different outcome. So here, they're saying they're checking CODIS. Well, if this guy never commits another crime, that's a wasted effort. The suggestion to go through CC Moore and Parabon is novel and try something different. The problem that you got with that is if there is a degraded sample or partial profile that's collected enough to identify a third male, but you don't have a full profile that you can submit for genetic genealogy, the only alternative remaining is to find your suspect, take his DNA, and then compare. So you got the partial, and you got the full of your suspect, and you'll match them up, and you're saying, hey, it's a complete match for what's present. So you got, like 3 or 4 alleles, and you match it to a full panel, and you say this DNA is consistent with the criminal's DNA. It doesn't rule him out. But if there was one difference, then it can't be him because it's not a complete match for what is available.
Gotcha. I got a couple super chats here I want to get to here. And thank you so much for answering that, Jason. I appreciate that. Because I know a lot of people are probably asking that theory as well. Avery, thank you so much for the $10 super chat. Could have been 2 juveniles and 1 bailed before the plan to take her out of the window happened. 2 teens trying to make money off of it, and it went all wrong, and it all went wrong. Make it make sense, Jason. What are your thoughts on that? Jason,
how do 2 people keep a secret? One is dead. If you got 2 people, someone's going to leak it out some way, somewhere. This is a single individual. It's not some group or organization or anything like that, because somebody would have said something.
Right. Yeah. People like to talk. Especially if they're distraught about something. People talk.
Well, because if you had a partner in a crime, at some point you're going to sit back and say, hey, they're talking again. What are you thinking? And then somebody hears you, or that guy then gets drunk and muddles something over to the bartender. Eventually it comes out.
Right. The paranoia gets real. The paranoia most definitely gets real.
Like, I know I can keep the secret, but I can't trust John. Now I got to kill John so that he doesn't let the secret out.
Exactly. I see what you're saying. DL, thank you so much for the 5. He said, or they said, was the man who plays Santa Claus at Ramsey's party a Geppetto? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, let's just say, even if he was, and I don't know if he was or not, but if he was, they've already would have tested him and he wasn't a match. Everything that they've done to this day has led them nowhere, or this case would be solved. So this is somebody that's not been on anybody's radar yet. And I know that particular suspect has been discussed numerous times, and it wasn't worth my time to dip into, because, these people have already been properly vetted and excluded by now.
Interesting.
25 years.
True. Now, somebody just said, this is not a super chat, but I wanted to pull this up. Jalen just said, by the way, DNA is also easily manipulated. Is that entirely true or not? For in your years of experience, is that true or not? Especially something that's 25 years old. I mean, does the DNA still hold up after 25 years?
Well, DNA is highly suspect to degrade by the conditions, how they're stored, how they're transported. It's easily transferred between items. You can corrupt and contaminate. The problem that, what this person's saying is manipulated. I'll give you one example. One of the reasons why in the O.J. Simpson trial ended up in an acquittal was there is pretty strong evidence that somebody collected a sample of O.J.'s blood, and then that blood was taken to the crime scene and added in different locations to strengthen the case. And that was the arguments in front of the jury. So when you have evidence of, manipulating the DNA, that, his DNA is throughout the crime scene, that's troublesome. And so it can happen. And it also can mean that if I wasn't properly following protocol, I can get my DNA in the crime scene.
Yeah.
So anything can happen if it's not properly handled. One of the things that they were saying was, they didn't cordon off the house and secure it as a crime scene. So you got people walking in and out and around and everything else. Then you have John himself find his daughter, whoop her up and bring her upstairs, which I would do. I know firsthand. When my middle daughter was 20 months old, she drowned in our hot tub. We didn't leave her there. We brought her out. I gave her mouth to mouth, resuscitated her, brought her back before the fire department even showed up. Because if I waited for them, she wouldn't be with us to this day. So,
exactly. Forget
if that was a crime instead of, an accident,
absolutely.
you're not going to leave her in that condition. So it's highly possible that John grabbed her thinking that there's still a chance to save her and bring her upstairs and call 911 and, let's start CPR or something. But, that's a human reaction. That's not one that's sitting there saying, let's be forensic here. Let's preserve the crime scene.
Right.
You sent the father looking for the victim. That never should have happened. They should have said, everybody out of the house. We're going to search the house. And if they found her body, nobody would have touched her. Maybe they would have checked for a pulse or checked for breathing, and they would have left her there. But that was the era of the police letting family members and the neighbor go looking for the victim.
It's a shame. Got a couple more. Avery, thank you so much again for the 5. Is the bruising on the back of her shoulder consistent with anything you know of?
Oh, what's the bruise? Do we have the type of bruise on her back?
I that's the thing. I'm curious about that.
I'm not aware of a bruise on her back, but
maybe that's some news. That's something new, or maybe it's an old. Maybe it's an old theory. Maybe that too. Got another one from Avery as well. Are the ligature marks consistent with her being pulled upward? And from what I've seen, the photos that I've seen and all that, especially with your theory, especially with that photo that you've shown, Jason, it does show that it's looking like from an upward angle for sure. But I will say this. But I will say this though too. Obviously I'm not the expert, but I am somebody who likes to to think about this critically, right? She is 6 years old. So if this is a teenager or a grown person, they're going to tower over her. So no matter if they were standing inside the basement or if they were coming in from the window trying to pull her up through the window, it's still going to have the same consistent type of upward angle. At least that's just what I think. But Jason, what are your thoughts?
Oh, 100% right, Pascal. You nailed it, because he's going to be out of the window, extended, reaching in, trying to pull her up. And, if you don't have a good upper body strength, shoulder, you're not going to be able to pull her up. And if you're immature development-wise, not a grown adult with big, strong shoulders, it's entirely possible he could not pull her up.
Yeah. And I think that's what's the ongoing, questions here of was this person, because you got to think about it. This person obviously was inside the house at some point, because how would they have gotten, if the letter, right, if that note was actually written by the person that took her life, how did that person obtain the stationery to be able to write said note to the family right after her demise? You see what I'm saying? Unless there are other theories of maybe this person was stalking, went into the house before, maybe wrote this letter, left it behind. I don't know. Like I said, somehow this person was able to get inside the house and get the stationery to write said note, if that note is written by said killer. So
right, Pascal, if you could pull up that first page of the note. Now let me identify something that I observed that most people don't seem to talk about, which I think is important to bring up here.
1 second. I just put it away. Give me 1 second. Boom. Here we go.
All right. If you look at it, if you look how the letters are actually written out, okay,
Mhm.
are they smooth lines? There's not a single smooth line in that whole thing. It's very shaky. It's consistent with two scenarios. Either that the author has like Parkinson's or something, where he has, no ability to maintain a smooth hand. So it's not a surgeon, okay? It's very shaky. Or somebody that's very nervous or scared, because that becomes an involuntary movement that you can't maintain. You're so nervous that you're shaking. Even if you try, you can't stop it, because you do not have a single smooth line in that whole multiple page letter.
Right.
A single one. So is somebody writing it deliberately? I'd say no. You can't fake that. That's too shaky. It would take a lot of time to sit there and purposely trying to do that. That's somebody that's scared or somebody that's seriously old.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, scared of getting caught, or scared about what just happened to their daughter, maybe.
Right.
It could be a multitude of things, or it could just be straight adrenaline of after doing said thing as well. You know, adrenaline does some crazy things to people when they're when they're on that high, if you will.
Right.
You know, so that could be it too. But yeah,
100%.
this is not a smooth written.
There's nothing smooth about it at all.
Not like they wrote this in a car. You know what I'm saying?
Right. And there's misspells and stuff, like business does not have two S's. If you scroll down in the following pages, they're writing, to put the money in a small attaché. Well, a 5-year-old doesn't know, or a 9-year-old like Bert doesn't know what an attaché is, let alone to spell it right. That's at least a middle school vocabulary word, attaché.
Yeah.
And I bet you half of your audience doesn't know how to spell attaché anyway.
It's attached with an E with an accent mark over the E, but that's just me, right? Right.
Right. But if they're going to misspell business, but they can spell attaché correct, something's up.
Sums up for sure. But thank you so much for pointing that out. Seriously. $2. Thank you so much, Avery. It is info@thepascalshow. So if you have something that you want to send my way, by all means, send it my way. We will be wrapping up the show here fairly shortly, but yes, send it whatever you need to send over my way by that email. Okay, info@thepascalshow.com. All right. Yes. So yeah, I mean, and that's the other thing. The letter does spark a lot of questions. Understandably, it sparks a buttload of questions, at least for me. And of course, how she passed over, how she crossed over, how she transitioned from this world does pop up a lot of questions. And then, of course, the remaining piece here. Let's just drill that home one more time. The police could be looking at this, running the DNA, and they're not doing so. And it's been weeks, it's been months now, where the family has basically said, please test this DNA so that, one, we can find out what actually happened, and this little girl can finally rest in peace. That's all they want. They just want to know what is going on, who did this, so that they can bring justice for JonBenet Ramsey. Any last thoughts real quick, Jason?
Sure. I'm glad you asked, because I really wanted to get the point out there, is that the investigator on the case has always been on the case, and Boulder PD has been the only agency, heading this case. So I think in order to rebuild public confidence, they need to relinquish the case to a different agency or reassign it to a different investigator, so there can be that healing process for the family and for the community. So,
yes.
That's been one of the calls to action by the petition that the Ramseys had set up on change.org. And I encourage everyone to go there and sign that.
Yes, please do. Please do. We definitely need to get this information, even if it may lead to nowhere, but at least it's a step in the right direction, so that, yes, a community can rest, a family can rest, and this little girl's soul can finally rest. Jason, again, thank you so much for being on here. Can you let everybody know where they can maybe follow you, that kind of thing? Because I know you're covering this and watching this and many other stories as well, many other cases as well. So please, you were on with the Kylan Schulte and Crystal Turner situation in Moab, Utah. You helped close that case, which of course ended sadly, of course, but there was justice for those two young women. So please let people know where they can find you and follow you and all that, please.
Sure. If they want to see, other cases and more posts and discussions about this particular case, they can find me on either Twitter, which is my handle is JasonJPI, or they can go to Facebook and do a search for me. It's Jason K. Jensen PI.
There it is, guys. Please go and check him out. Follow him, support, go over to change.org, sign that petition. Let's get justice for that young woman or that young girl, and may she rest in peace. Jason, again, thank you so much for hopping on and talking with me. I really do appreciate it. Seriously, I really do appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Pascal. I appreciate you giving me the audience.
Anytime, my brother. Anytime. Let's bring some justice to all these people out here. We need to do it just one case at a time, and you're doing an amazing job doing exactly that. So thank you. All right. I'll be talking to you soon.
Thank you, bud. Have a good night.
You too, brother. Bye. Listen, guys, I really do appreciate all y'all for being on, being a part of the conversation this evening. Like I said, it is this is an ongoing case that, of course, we need to know more truth about. And Jason said it beautifully at the end. It's more than just for this young girl to finally rest, let her soul rest and get justice for this young girl, but it's also for an entire community of people that have been drawn in by this devastating story for the past 25 years. It's been 25 years. And now that we have new technology, new information, new ways of getting information, we should go and get this stuff tested so we find out what really is going down here with the quickness. Hopefully you guys go and check out that change.org petition. Sign it so that we can bring justice, not only just for that little girl, but for an entire community. All right. Anyway, it's time to get going, guys. I appreciate all y'all. Do me a favor, hit that like button down below. Do not forget to do that. And also, please crush that subscribe button. All right. Be great to have you a part of the Pascal Show family. And of course, you can always support this channel by checking out my Patreon, checking out my locals. There's even the CashApp down below. And also, you could just hit that join button. All right. And check out my merch page. Be great to have you support and wear some of my t-shirts or something like that. Anyway, it's time to get going, guys. I appreciate all y'all. Be good to yourselves. Be good to one another. And I'll see you guys in the next video. This is the Pascal Show. Bye.